Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to today's webinar on how to prepare for Christmas. My name is Jessica and I'm the Customer Training Manager here at Fixflo. It's great to see so many of you on the webinar this morning, so welcome. Before we get started, I'm just going to go through a quick agenda with you all. So first of all, essentially what we're going to be going through is how you can edit the content on your Fixflo account. So that will be, for example, your welcome message that occupiers see, and also your guidance and advice pop-ups as well. So how can you edit those to prepare your Fixflo account for Christmas? And once we've gone over that, we're going to be going over Copilot. So that will be adding rules on Copilot, what happens if a rule is triggered, and also the importance of the order of your Copilot rules. Guys, any questions at all, please do get them over to me. I will be answering them at the end of the webinar. So you should see a little Q&A button on your Zoom bar. Simply click there, ask the question, and they will all be answered at the end of this webinar. Guys, before we get started, I'm just going to release a very quick poll. So just be great to get some feedback from you. There's just 3 very quick yes or no questions, essentially. Be great if you could very quickly answer these. It's regarding Copilot, essentially. So whether or not you've watched our training videos on Copilot already, whether you've got any Copilot rules set up on your account, and finally, how confident, or do you feel confident, essentially, in adding rules on Copilot, because that is going to be the majority of this morning's webinar. Just going to leave that up there for 30 seconds. And then what we'll be doing is beginning the webinar. Just want to welcome those who have just joined us. My name's Jessica and I'll be taking you through the webinar this morning. If you haven't missed anything yet, we've just gone through the agenda. And there is a poll up there just asking a few quick yes or no questions on Copilot. Okay, perfect. Thank you to everybody who voted in that poll. Just going to be ending that now. Fantastic. Well, hopefully we can change that and we can get you guys feeling much more confident and happy and understand Copilot better. But before we start that, we're going to be starting with your content on Fixflo. So when I'm talking about your content, I'm talking about what's going to be shown on the occupier side of your Fixflo system. I think you all deserve a break this Christmas. It's not been a good year, not for anybody. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. But let's get your Fixflo account set up for Christmas. Just to let you guys know as well, I am recording this webinar, so you will be able to re-watch any sections of this webinar that you want to later. If, for example, you want to just re-watch and just double check as you're making changes to your own Fixflo system. So with regards to editing content, just to let you know, you will need to have administrator rights in order to access setup, which sits towards the bottom left-hand side of your left-hand menu sidebar. If you do not have access to setup, you can speak to somebody who can either give you the permission to have setup by changing essentially your user role within your agent profile, or you can let them know how to do it. It's very, very quick and easy. So let's start with the welcome message. The welcome message essentially sits at the top of the occupier side. So I'll show you that in just a moment. But first of all, how do you change this message? So again, you will need administrator rights and you can click here on setup and you will want to then click on content edit, which appears in this little drop down here. Okay, so content edit. Once you've clicked on content edit, you will notice there are 2 tabs at the top of this kind of banner. You'll want to remain, guys, within the Contents tab in order to make amendments to your welcome message. You'll scroll right to the bottom of this tab where you can see here it says Text Issue Welcome Message, or Text Issue Welcome even. So if I click here on Text Issue Welcome, it will take you through, and this is what my welcome message currently says to my occupiers. So it says, welcome to our repair reporting system. Please be as descriptive as possible and always provide a photo of the problem when you can. So with Christmas coming up, bank holidays are obviously coming up. If you wanted to, you could add some additional information here. For example, Christmas opening hours, like I've just added to my welcome message there. You can make changes. You could make it bold, for example, if you wanted to here. So you can make changes to the text. And then once you're happy, you can press save. So if I save that message there, just to very quickly show you, if I log out now of the agent profile to go to the occupier side of the site, you will see that this is how my welcome message looks, and this is also where it sits. So it will sit underneath your logo, above all of these icons, and you may want to make changes to this. You can make it a bit fun if you want to and add like emojis and things like that. Completely up to you. Make it stand out a bit more, but that is something that you can change. Again, you need those administrator rights. You will click on setup, go to content edit, scroll to the bottom and click on text issue welcome. Very easily done, and it can make a slight difference. Just wishing your occupiers a Merry Christmas might be a nice thing to do as well. So if you want to make changes, that is how you change the welcome message. I also wanted to show you how you could change your guidance and advice pop-ups. So one thing you can pull through to your guidance and advice pop-ups is your telephone numbers. Now these may change over Christmas. If you're not in the office, you may want to put a mobile number for out of hours emergencies, anything like that. So again, you'll be in setup, content edit here, and within the content section, it's right at the top, this one, it's agent telephone numbers. You can simply click into here and you can amend your telephone numbers here. You can obviously add things like the office hours and the out of hours, and then put the number in as it would be. Once you're happy, or remember, you must press save. All of these things that you're changing, you must press save. And then they are the numbers that pull through when you add the correct token to your content pop-ups. So we're going to go through that just now. So that is how, though, you change these telephone numbers, which then pull through to the token. The actual guidance and advice pop-ups, now these are fantastic. These are essentially the templated pop-ups, which sit on the occupier side of the site, which can help to filter out maintenance issues that should not be coming through to you, and also help with first-time fixes. Now, you may want to make amendments to these around the Christmas period, and if you would like to do that, again, within this content edit section, you want to click here on this second tab, fault tree pop-ups. Now, these will show you all of the templated pop-ups that you currently have on your system. So, for example, if I go here to message to occupier boiler, I can click into here and I can make amendments very easily to this. It's just like a Word document, just like the welcome message. Click in and start adding information if you want to. You can add videos, photos, GIFs if you want to as well. And just to let you know, the tokens all sit down on the bottom right-hand side of the page here. And literally, if you add office hours, this token, then what you put in those telephone numbers will pull through. So that is a token that you can add if you'd like to. Just remember, you must update those telephone numbers to make sure they're correct. And then as long as you've got the token in there, it will pull through to the pop-up. And all of the usages for this pop-up will sit here on the right-hand side as well. As I mentioned, you may want to make changes to these pop-ups during Christmas. Completely up to you. I can see somebody has just raised their hand. If you have a question, if you can just pop it through the Q&A button on Zoom, and all questions, guys, will be answered at the end. At the end, there's the live Q&A section. Get your questions over to me, though, as they come to your mind, and I will answer them at the end. It just keeps us on track. But if you did raise your hand to ask a question, that's why you do it. Okay, perfect. So I hope that makes sense. Any changes are made in here, and it will then reflect through onto the occupier side of the site on these particular usages. Now, if you want to add this pop-up to other usages or just add a whole new pop-up where in a space that you don't currently have one, you can do that. So to do that, guys, again, you'll need the administrator rights because it's under setup and it's here on fault tree edit. Now, if I click on fault tree edit, essentially this will take me through to what looks like a kind of mini version of the occupier side here on the right-hand side, where you can see it says select a fault category. So here are all of your fault categories. And guys, just to let you know, you can actually remove fault categories if you wish to. For example, swimming pool, I could click into swimming pool and I could actually, on the left-hand side, that will then appear and I could hide that category icon if I wanted to. Just going back to home, I just wanted to show you, for example, here, pests and vermin. If I clicked into pests and vermin, say, for example, I go into rodents, and this is to add a whole new fault pop-up. If I click, for example, here on rats, you can see here, it shows me what the current pop-up is. So the current pop-up for this is actually none. I don't have one at the moment. I can either add a whole new one if I want to, or I could actually copy one over from another one if I want to as well. So you do have the opportunity to add more guidance and advice where it currently isn't. So that's all there. And that would be done, here through fault tree edit. So guys, that's how you change your content. And like I say, you may want to make small changes before Christmas, completely up to you. It could make a difference, and obviously that's what occupiers will then see. And if you want to get that message out there, please feel free to do so. Fantastic. So now what I'm going to do is show you Copilot, which is an absolutely fantastic feature of Fixflo. It sits on your left-hand menu sidebar on the absolute bottom here where it says Copilot, and everybody has access to this. So you do not need to be an administrator in order to access Copilot. So here she is, here's Copilot, and essentially she is your friendly works automated assistant. So this essentially, guys, allows you to automate works through Fixflo. So what you'll be doing essentially is you'll be setting up filters where your filters will be saying, if X happens, you want Y to happen. So something will automatically happen based on your Copilot filters. Essentially, what you do is you add rules, and within those rules, you have your X, which is your filters. If X happens, so if your filters happen, then your automation, so Y happens. Your rules will sit here. Currently, you can see I have no rules because all I can see here is my little Copilot buddy. And I can easily add a new rule by either clicking in the middle section here where it says add rule, or in the top left-hand corner where it here says add rule. Now, you can get really, really granular when adding these rules. So I'm going to take you through how you would add a rule and then what happens when that rule is triggered. And then I'll be explaining to you how the importance of the order of the rules. So let's start with adding a rule. So I'm going to click here on add rule, and it will take me through to this little pop-up here, where essentially there are templates that you could use to make it quicker for you to add a rule. So the first one is completely blank, add an empty rule, and I'll be adding that in just a moment. The others, as you can see, are for out of hours, instructing a plumber, or notifying a landlord. So let's go with an empty rule, just so we start from scratch here, and I click add. It will then take me through to this page where I can add my rule. So the first thing I need to add when I'm adding a new rule essentially is a name. So what I would highly recommend is that when you are adding your rule name, you're really, really specific here, so that when you're looking at all of your rules together, once you've got your rules in place, you or anyone else, so any colleague that kind of goes onto Copilot, can really clearly understand exactly what this rule is saying. So with this example, I'm going to say, locked out Christmas. So locked out at Christmas. You could put more information here if you want to, for example. So here I can clearly say locked out over Christmas, this job will be automatically instructed to Reggie, who's one of my contractors. So you can now enable the rules. So once you've set rules up, they can easily be enabled and disabled. And again, I will show you that a bit later. But for now, I'm going to set this as an enabled rule. And here you can see now the screen is essentially split between filters and actions. So your filters are your X. If X happens, you want Y to happen, which is your action. So we'll start with adding filters. And as I think I mentioned just now, you can get really, really granular to say you want something really, really specific to happen in order for it to automate. So let's go through this now together. So if I click here to add a filter, you can see this pop-up appears to add a filter. So it says filter which issues trigger this rule. So if I click on this, a drop down appears, and I'm going to take you through each and every option here before we then set and create a dummy rule. Okay, so let's start at the top. So here we've got any. So this essentially is you saying anything that happens, you're happy for that to then automate. So that's your filter. You're saying absolutely anything. Very, very broad there. Underneath that, guys, we have got covered by network. So if you guys have got AXA set up, which is one of our contractor networks that we work with, then essentially you will need to select covered by network in order to select AXA. You cannot select AXA without choosing covered by network. We are going to be holding a webinar next week. We don't have a time and date quite yet for it, but you will all be invited. It is a webinar specifically on AXA. It will be held by or hosted by my colleague Mike, and he essentially will walk you through how you can set up the integration between Fixflo and AXA so that essentially AXA will cover your emergency repairs. He will be going through all of this next week. Again, you will be invited to the webinar. He doesn't quite have a time and date for it yet, but please do attend that. It is going to allow you to see how you can get your Fixflo account set up to have AXA go out for your emergency repairs. It really does give you that break any time of the year, especially over Christmas. You don't pay per month or per week or anything like that. There's no setup fee. You literally pay per job, and it allows you to essentially send everything over to AXA. Again, that will be next week. Please come along to that if you are interested in AXA, and he will also be going through adding a co-pilot rule for AXA. Next here we have got period. So this is over a specific period of time. This is really widely used actually over Christmas, because you might be saying that you want certain boiler issues to be instructed to certain people only over a certain period of time, i.e. Christmas, New Year. So that allows you to literally set a specific period of time. Underneath that, we have got fault. So this is you saying for specific faults only, you would like something to automate. Next, we've got fault priority. So essentially, when an issue is created on Fixflo, the issue will be given a fault priority. This will depend on the nature of the job and also if there's a vulnerable occupier at the property. You can, for example, have it so that only certain fault priorities, such as 0 and 1 perhaps, would be then automated over, for example, certain periods or just all of the time. You can set that up for automation. Next, we've got time. So this essentially is recurring periods of time. For example, every Monday, every weekend, every single evening, you can set that up as well. Next here, we've got location. So essentially this would be postcode location. So you could say, I mean, there's no point in sending an issue that's happened, I don't know, up in Manchester to a contractor that works in Bournemouth. I mean, he's not going to go all the way to Manchester. So you can be location specific with your co-pilot rules. Property, this is you saying that specific properties, you want things to be automated as well. Property tag. So within the property profiles, you can actually add a tag now as well. And essentially, this allows you to group properties together. For example, you may add a tag to say, actually, these, I don't know, 10 properties that all have British Gas Home Care. In which case you may want to choose that property tag and actually set up an automation that nothing happens at all for those properties under that tag. So again, it allows you to group properties together and then use that within Copilot to say this group of properties you would like, you know, X to happen or X maybe not to happen even. Landlord, you can get landlord specific as well. So if you've got certain landlords that say, do you know, I really like this particular contractor, I'm happy with him over Christmas or just him in general, you could then be landlord specific as to who you instruct the jobs to. Or you may have landlords that actually say, Joe, I really love Fixflo, love what you're doing, not too keen on that automation. Or they might say, notify me, I'd like to know about these things. And finally, raised by, so who the issue gets raised by. You may say that if it doesn't get raised by the occupier, you don't want an automation to happen. So these are the filters that you can set up. And as you can imagine, the more and more filters you set up, for example, you could say issues at a certain fault during a certain specific time period in a certain location, you only want those to be automated. So you can really, really get granular here when you set up your filters. So if we go back to my rule that I'm setting up here, so we can see the rule is locked out at Christmas, instruct it to Reggie. So I'm going to here click to add a new filter. And the first filter then I'm going to want to set up, guys, is a fault because I've said locked out. So when I select fault from the drop down, you can see all of the faults appear in their categories. So we've got bathroom and toilet, kitchen, alarms and smoke detectors, and so on. Just to let you know, what you could do is, so for example, locked out would be under here, doors, garages and locks. I could tick that entire box, which means that absolutely everything within doors, garages and locks would then tick, meaning that I'm saying anything under doors, garages and locks, I'm happy for that fault, any of those faults essentially to automate. I, in this situation, don't want to do that. It's a little bit too broad. So I'm going to untick that whole box, but I've still got doors, garages and locks open, and I'm going to get more granular here. So I'm going to choose locks and keys. Again, I could tick that whole box, or I could open that up instead to say that actually, again, I want to get more and more granular here. And I want to literally select key lost. So whether they've lost it and the property can be accessed, cannot be accessed, or other, I'm happy in this scenario, in this dummy example, guys, I'm happy for this to automate. So I'm going to press OK. So that's the fault type. I could move on here now and add an action, but that would mean that that fault type in any location, at any time, any day, it will automate if I now add an action. If I want to set up more filters, I can easily do so by clicking here to add a new filter. And we can see here that this says Christmas. Now, for this example, what I'm going to do is instead of choosing a period, I'm actually going to choose a time. Now, the difference again between periods and time is that period is a select period in time, non-recurring, i.e. a certain number of days or a particular week. Time is recurring time. So if I choose time with this example, you can see that all of the days of the week appear and all of the hours across those days. So I can essentially select that in a particular hour on a particular day, I want this to automate. But for now, I'm going to select Tuesday as it is Tuesday today. But let's pretend that that is Christmas and press OK. So now I'm saying that anybody that gets locked out on a Tuesday, again, I haven't been location specific or property specific. So anywhere it will automate. With this example, I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to now click here to add an action. So my X is somebody that gets locked out, whether they can or cannot access the property, or if they click other on a Tuesday, I would like to add an action. And then I have 4 options here. You'll notice, sorry, that AXA has not appeared because I have not selected covered by network. Again, there will be a webinar on that next week. So please do join us on that. If you are interested in AXA, Mike will walk you through how to set all of that up. It's very easy to do. But with these 4 actions we have got here, do nothing. Now we'll come back to that a bit later, so bear with me on that one. Next, we've got notify. You may have landlords that say, actually, I want to be notified about, you know, certain jobs, or you might have occupiers. You might want to even, you may even want to notify the occupier to say, you know, thank you for reporting your maintenance issues. We are now closed over Christmas. You know, this isn't deemed urgent, something like that. So you could set up for certain faults that actually they get another response to explain, you know, a little bit about the fact that you are now closed. Or you've got instruct works or request quotes. Now, all of these can be used all year round. The reason we're doing this around Christmas is because a lot of people use Copilot over Christmas. As I say, it gives you that well-deserved break, which is definitely needed this year. So you can automate these to your contractors that you currently already have within the system. So, for example, in this case, I'm going to instruct the works straight to a contractor. Now, I will need to type to start adding a contractor here, like so. So that's my contractor, Reggie. You can set a works authorization limit, and you must add an instruction note. As you can see, this will not save without an instruction note. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to keep that nice and short and press OK. Now, before you save your rules, remember you are automating works now. So you want to make sure you're double checking your filters, you're double checking your actions, and you're happy with everything before you press save. I would also actually recommend that you do test these as well, because you're now setting up automation. It can be a little bit scary. So just test it with a dummy contractor, test it with a dummy notification. Have a play around with Copilot first, just to make sure you're fully happy so you really can relax back over Christmas. Once happy, we can press save. Once we've pressed save, that's it. The rule now sits there, and if I hit back, you will see that the rule now sits there. It's rule number 1. It's the only rule I've got there currently, and it is enabled. We're going to go through these rules in a bit more detail later, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out, and I'm now going to report a maintenance issue as an occupier that I've just been locked out. It's a Tuesday, the location won't matter. We're going to see now what happens if this rule is triggered. So here I am now on my occupier side of the site, and I've just lost my key. I can't get into my property. You know, this isn't an ideal situation. It's really an emergency. So what I can do is I can go to doors, garages and locks, which sits up here. Now, if I go to any of these except for locks and keys, remember it will not automate. The only thing that will automate is if I click in locks and keys and I go to key lost. Any of these that I choose now will automate. I don't know this is the tenant, do I? Because I have no idea Copilot's been set up, but in your peace of mind, any of these options on a Tuesday that gets selected anywhere with the filter I've been set up, it will now automate. So for this example, I'm saying the property can't be accessed. You can see here, this is my emergency pop-up. So again, if you want to change these pop-ups for more details, you can do so as I showed you just before. Again, you will need those admin rights. Okay, perfect. So I just need to add some details here. Okay, perfect. I can add a photo if I want to. Address details. Now, again, I haven't put anything down now with regards to location specific. So with this example, it could be any property anywhere. Contact details, this will never affect Copilot. And then confirm and send. So here I must fill out those Corona questions. So if you've got your Corona questions turned on for occupiers, they become mandatory. They sit here. I can add further notes if I want to as the occupier. I can say whether or not I want to be present. I mean, that won't affect Copilot either. The vulnerable occupier, if I tick there's a vulnerable occupier at the property, in some situations, depending on your rules, it could affect it because that will increase the priority of an issue. So if you've got priority numbers set, it could potentially affect your Copilot rule, but in this case, it won't. And I'm going to say agree to the terms and conditions. So it's a Tuesday. I'm saying that that I've lost my key and I'm locked out, and I've just reported that issue now as an occupier. Okay, so that has now gone through. If we now log in as the agent, that problem's obviously been reported. Now, what actually happens is when an issue is reported on Fixflo, the first thing that happens is that issue will go to Copilot, and it will go through the rules one by one, starting at the top, rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, and it will ask Copilot, has what's been reported, does it match exactly the filters that has been set up by this agent? If the answer is yes, it will then go and it will automate. If the answer is no at rule 1, it will go to rule 2 and it will check those filters. If the answer is no again, it will go to rule 3 and so on all the way through. If it doesn't match any, it will come in as a reported issue. So the issue status of that issue will be reported. However, with this issue, if I click into it here, you can see this is the issue that I've just reported. So if I go to the detail tab, we can see it's occupier Joanne Smale. It was reported today, so Tuesday, the 1st of December at 11:30. I'm sure you're all happy that this is the issue I've just reported. If I go to next steps, first thing you'll notice is the issue status. It is not a reported issue. It has gone straight, because it's matched the filter that I set up with you guys just a moment ago. It has gone straight to the contractor, and the issue status is not reported. It's gone straight to job awarded, awaiting appointment date. I can see a contractor is attached to the issue. We're waiting for him now to crack on with that issue. And on the audit tab, you will also notice here that the issue was instructed straight to Reggie Pepper here, and that the issue, it was changed straight to job awarded, awaiting appointment date. So you can see straight away that that's happened. If I go to Copilot as well, I can see the hit count of this issue. So I can see that actually, if I click onto that number 1 and go to history, I can actually see all of the issues and easily click into them of any issues that have been triggered by this particular rule. So I hope you're all happy with that. It was a Tuesday, locked out, reported the issue. It came straight in as job awarded, awaiting appointment date. It went straight off to the contractor. So the contractor received this email here saying they've been allocated a job. So all the details are on there, and they now crack on with the issue straight away, meaning that over Christmas, for example, if you have certain contractors happy to work, happy to maybe make a bit more money, you could say, okay, cool, we're going to set it up actually so that certain issues, particularly emergencies, go straight to certain contractors. Now, I said to you I would come back and explain to you do nothing. So say, for example, so I'm going to add a new rule here now. And I'm going to go for blank rule again. Say you've got a certain landlord, say, that, as I mentioned before, says, really love what you guys are doing, love your maintenance platform, not super keen on this Copilot thing. I'm actually quite happy for, nothing to happen on those issues. You could then set up a certain rule. Sorry. So you put the landlord's name in here and do nothing. Again, you want to make sure that you're specific about your rules. Enable that rule. With this example, I'm going to add a filter about a certain landlord. Your landlords must already be on Fixflo in order to pull through onto here. Same with your properties and contractors, etc. Going to press yes. So I'm saying that this particular landlord actually would like the action in this scenario to be do nothing, which means that no action will take place other than the addition of an audit history demonstrating that the rule has been completed, because it's still a rule that would be matched. So this is the example here. Going to press save. Now, if I hit back, I've now got 2 rules. Okay, I've got one saying landlord do nothing and the other about being locked out. Now, this is the importance of the order of the rules. So as I mentioned before, When an issue comes in to Fixflo and a new issue is submitted, the first thing that actually happens is that rule or issue, goes to Copilot and says, does exactly what's been matched, does exactly what's been set up on these filters, does it match what has just come in? And it will go to rule 1 first. So it will go first of all here to locked out Christmas. And it will say, okay, cool, someone's been locked out on a Tuesday with this example. Actually, yeah, that needs to automate, and it will automate straight away. It will not even reach rule number 2. So it will go in the order that you've set up. So with this example, if you have a landlord that says, I'm not keen on Copilot, you must make sure that that rule is picked up and dragged to the top of the rule list, so that when the rule comes in for a property associated with that landlord, nothing happens. Otherwise, it will go on rule 1, it could automate, and it won't even reach your rule you've set up to say nothing must happen with this particular landlord or this particular property or these property tags. So you must make sure anything that you are ruling out is set to the top of the rule list, if that makes sense. You can disable rules very easily by clicking on these. So if you want to, remember, if you've got periods set up in a rule, you've got a filter for periods, you won't need to disable things once that period's ended, because that filter will essentially, if for example, you say on the 24th to the 26th of December, you want certain automation to happen, by the 27th, the filters won't exactly match it anyway. So you won't need to disable it because that period will be accounted for. But you must make sure your order is correct. You can also copy rules if you want to. So you can see there, we've got the copy. It does fall to the bottom of the list, as you can see. But if, for example, you've got rules that are very similar, you can copy a rule, click into that, obviously change the title and make the amendments that you want. So that can be done as well. Any rules that are copied, you can see copy out as non-enabled, so disabled. So you can then enable them once you're happy. You can delete rules easily here as well, and you can also edit the rules. To be honest, you can just click into a rule to edit the rule anyway. But that is how you set your Copilot up. As I said before, please test it. This is automating works now, so you want to make sure that you're testing these things to make sure you are fully happy with the automation you've been set up. And again, the order of the rules is so important. And make sure, maybe get somebody at your company just to check over your filters to make sure that actually that makes sense. And if you're interested in AXA, please come along to the webinar next week. Guys, I hope that has been helpful. A few questions have come in. We are actually pretty much there with the webinar. I thought it might go on a little bit longer. Before I answer those questions, I just have 2 very quick questions to put up in a poll. Just be great to find out of 10 how happy you are with this training, and just whether or not you found this webinar helpful. I hope you did. I hope it's given you a good indication, especially with Copilot, how you can set that up and have that well-deserved break over Christmas, and also whether or not you now feel confident in adding Copilot rules to your system. I am going to answer the questions that came in now. I do want you guys to feel confident with this, and Mike will be touching on Copilot as well next week. So if you feel like sometimes getting different explanations from different people, they might say something slightly different which clicks more as well. So do feel free to come along to this. So first question came in. So if you filter down to keys, but the tenant selects all doors, garages, etc., and advises in there that he has lost his keys, will the lost key messages pop up? Okay, Susan, so that's a good question. So what you'll need to do is you will need to go to setup. So again, you'll need administrator rights for this, and you'll need to click on fault tree edit. In fault tree edit, you can check whether or not the pop-ups will appear. So for example, with this one, if I go to doors, garages and locks in here, and say, for example, they go to external door, and say, for example, they wanted to say that they'd lost their key for the external door and just went down the wrong route and clicked on other, you can see the current pop-up for that is in fact none. So unfortunately, in this case, for my example, no, nothing about lost keys would appear. You can copy over the locks message if you want to, or you could add a whole new message here. So it's about making sure you're happy with the content that is going out to occupiers. As I said before, it really can make a massive, massive difference as to how your occupiers kind of get on with things, filtering maintenance issues out, etc. So please make sure you're happy with your pop-ups, and I would just suggest going through your fault tree edit and going to things that people may be clicking on just to make sure that you're happy with what actually they are seeing. I hope that's answered your question. The next question is coming from Kerry. So does this mean we can set up Copilot to send straight to a landlord if he looks after his own maintenance, or to a landlord for authorization without coming to me? So essentially what you can do in Copilot is, if I click here on add new rule and go to a blank rule, you could set up a filter to for a landlord here. I go to search landlord and click on OK. And in notify, you could essentially say that you want to notify the landlord, and you could add a message here saying, you know, please could you provide us with an authorization limit? Now, essentially, because this is notifying, this is not essentially going down the workflow, request landlord advice, which is where you could essentially ask the landlord what to do. But you could send a little message in here, and in that message, you could ask the landlord to please, I'm just going to end the poll. Thank you, by the way, to everybody that did answer that. Thank you so much. So you could, in this message, say, please go through the comments to let us know what you would like us to do or what the authorization limit for this would be. And remember, you can have an authorization limit set up against each landlord. So with notify as well, with notify, you could also essentially instruct it to them and say, if you'd like to carry this out yourself, please do, just let us know in the comments. But there is no way, unfortunately, like with instruct works or request quotes, to actually use that workflow automatically. So it's not going to the landlord. I can request this to our development team, and I will put that forward for you, that you would like to essentially use the workflow so that the issue is progressed straight from reported. But at the moment, you could only do it through notify and actually ask them to reply to you via the comments tab. So the comments tab is where you can essentially communicate with all parties. To set up an authorization limit for a landlord, by default, you would go to people, you would click here on landlords, and you would click into the landlord that you would like, and essentially the authorization limit sits here. So that would then sit as the works authorization limit for every issue that comes through at the properties that are associated with this particular landlord. It would be there automatically. But again, if you would like to send something to the landlord or essentially progress an issue via the landlord, there's no workflow progression that can be done through Copilot for that, but you could use notify and ask them to reply in comments. I hope that has made sense. Okay, next question's from Oliver. Can you add multiple landlords or properties to the same rule? Of course, yes, you can. So if we go to Copilot here and go to add rule, you can click on, for example, properties here, and you could, for example, again, your properties must be pulling through to fix, they must be on Fixflo already to pull through, if that makes sense. But you can add multiple. And if you are adding multiple properties, remember, you could also, there we go, you could also use property tags if you wanted to. So again, that allows you to essentially group certain properties together, and then you could use property tag instead and search for the property tag. Again, it will need to already be on there to pull through, but then I could say all of my properties which have the property tag gas on, I would like to go through and automate. I hope that helps, Oliver. Susan, sorry, so you said, sorry, my point was more if we had the filter all the way to lost keys, and it's not the option the tenant chooses, say they choose the category heading, would it still match the automation rule? No, not if you've got, so if you've become really, really granular with your fault. So if when setting up a Copilot rule, you select the filter fault, and you literally go into doors, garages and locks, locks and keys, and you only select key lost, anything else they select on locks and keys will not automate. If you want absolutely everything in locks and keys to automate, then you can select that. But if you've become even more granular and you've only selected a particular fault, if they choose essentially the kind of wrong category, then no, it will not automate and they will not see the pop-up either. I hope that has answered your question, Susan, if that makes sense. Can you direct a tenant to, perfect, thank you, Susan. Next question, can you direct a tenant to say transco if they report the issue smell, if they report smell of gas? So essentially you could notify the tenant. So what you could do with that, so that's coming from an anonymous attendee, if for example, somebody has reported that they smell gas, so that would be, for example, here, smell gas. So what you could do is you could set up a filter that if they smell gas, you could add an action to notify the occupier, and you could add a little message to say, thank you for reporting that you're smelling gas, please go to, and you could essentially direct them to the place you want them to go. You could obviously do that with any fault at all. If you're doing it for gas particularly, you must make sure, first of all, you're selecting the correct fault. You can change times and stuff like that, but I guess if they're smelling gas, you're going to want to direct them every single time, and you could have a little notification going out to them. If you add notify as an action, an email will go out to them, but remember the issue will still come in as a reported issue. That is one thing just to clarify. Only instruct works and request quotes, the issue will come in and go to a separate workflow. We'll progress the issue using a workflow, and the issue status will be something different. Somebody said that I think there's a fault tree for gas. Yes, there is that as well. You could, for example, set that up if you want to. So if you go to setup and content edit and go to fault tree pop-ups, I believe there is actually as well here, gas leak. Give me a second. If I go to setup and fault tree edit actually, and we go to smell gas and smell, I don't know why it says oil there, but bear with me a second. If they're saying smell oil, you can see the pop-up here is none. You could add a pop-up as well. That's a good point. Thanks, Nikki. Don't know why I didn't think of that. So you could do it via Copilot, or you could just have it as the pop-up itself so that the issue doesn't actually get reported through to you at all. Can you notify the tenant and instruct works on the same rule? Good question. Bear with me 1 second. Pretty sure you can. So if we go to add a rule, you can add notify occupier, just as an example. And yes, you could then instruct the works as well. So you can definitely do that. So you can have 2 actions is the majority. You cannot, is the maximum even, sorry. You cannot have more than 2 actions per rule. But yes, you can have 2 rules. So thank you for that question. Somebody's asked, please could you send a recording of the webinar so I can keep on file? Of course, 100%, everybody will be receiving a recording, even those who registered and didn't quite manage to make it, but 100% Jez, you'll be receiving a recording. Keep it on file, yes, and you can also send it to your colleagues. Guys, I think that's it with the questions so far. I'll be staying online just for a few more minutes for those of you that have any further questions. Thank you to everybody who filled out the poll. If you still don't feel confident, remember you can come to Mike's webinar next week. You can re-watch this recording as well. And you can always email us support@fixflo.com for any questions. If you need any further help, there is a little need help button down here in the bottom left-hand corner where you can access our articles and also our video libraries. So please do check that out before you contact us. You'll probably find an answer much quicker, but you can always contact us down here. We understand not everything will be answered with an article or video. I'd like to wish you all, we are in December now, it's probably the first Merry Christmas you'll have, but I do want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. I hope you have a very well-deserved break and a lovely new year. It's not been a nice year. You know, brighter things are looking up for next year, which is very exciting. Let's all keep our fingers crossed for a vaccine soon, which should hopefully be rolled out. But do have a lovely time off with your families, and I hope this has made a difference to how you can set things up for Christmas. Thank you so much. I'll be staying online for the further questions. Bye-bye.